identify stakeholders, the first process of our project stakeholder management knowledge area. Now, in this process, we are going to identify the people who are getting impacted by our project. So let's look at the input information for identifying these guys. This process is an initiating process group process, which means we would be doing it very early in our project. But it does not mean that we will be only doing it early in the project. We start identifying people in the beginning, but we may keep identifying them during the execution and controlling. So, since we start from the beginning, we look at a primary source of information which is coming as an input to this project is project charter and procurement documents. In the initial stage of the project, we may only get these two documents to identify the stakeholders. The procurement documents primarily meaning the contract or an agreement which you have got along with the project charter for this execution of this project. At the later stage, the vendors and the procurement documents which you have issued to your sellers will also be used in order to identify the stakeholders. So, this gives us a key impacted parties, because in a project charter we would be talking about this is the goal of the project, this is the customer, they are the guys, this is the functional head who would remain involved. A summary level key party or key stakeholders will get identified if we analyze the project charter well. The second set of stakeholder comes from the organizational environmental factor. We know what kind of structure we are in. If we are in a structure where all releases are approved by a function head quality, so you need to know that he's a stakeholder. If we are in a structure where all procurement related things done by procurement head, then you know that he's a stakeholder, because whenever you want to procure, he's the guy. So the structure plays an important role in identifying stakeholders. We also need to look into the government or an environmental agencies. The environment you are working in may also put some kind of stakeholders to you. If you are working in a construction project, you know that community, the environmental groups and the government is a stakeholder in order to get approval for the next work. So the environment you are working in, internal as well as an external, will tell you a people list. Now, when we talk about stakeholder, I usually use the term people, but stakeholders could be government agencies or groups. It's not necessary to identify as an individual only. We may have a group A as a stakeholder, environmental group, a government agency X can become your stakeholder. So it's not always necessary a stakeholder is an individual. Then we also need to look into organization process assets. Why? It tells us lesson learned. It tells us that this was a project where this guy was not identified initially, and now we identified him at a later stage. We could have saved good amount of time and money if we know that he is the guy who is an important stakeholder. So lesson learned, templates for recording the assessment of or a stakeholder register is also coming from organization process assets. Some procedures which may you use in order to perform your work. Now, these are like obvious inputs because we want to identify groups, individuals who will get impacted by our project. So project charter, procurement document makes good sense, and the environment we are working in makes a good sense. Now what we do here, we need to perform 3 steps. We need to identify using these inputs. Then we need to do analysis of it. We need to analyze. And then we need to do an assessment. So, identify, analyze, and assess. This is the process or a tool and technique which we use in order to create a stakeholder register. And this tool and technique is called stakeholder analysis. So, we use a stakeholder analysis. Now, what do? First, we make a list of the people on the basis of our documentation input, and while making this list we also consult experts. We may involve people who were responsible for executing their procurement deal. Like, I am in a project, I am just a project manager, but there was a big history. There was a pre-sale event, there was a bid process, our pre-sale team was meeting those the buyers, and they made some promises. There were few individuals who were playing very key role in getting this contract done. So I need to consult all these experts and take an help to identify them. So the second tool which we use is expert judgment. And this expert judgment we may apply using a third tool which is called meeting. We may also involve somebody who is specialized in identifying stakeholders from our enterprise environmental factor, a person who has been into the organization for a very long time, and he is the one who understands the organization culture well and the impact of this project on various parties. We may take help of him in a meeting and try to identify a list of people who may be important or may get impacted. Now, this list may become too big. You may end up identifying 100 plus or 200 plus stakeholders. Now, you may not be able to put an equal amount of time investment in engaging all these stakeholders, and it may not be required to engage all these stakeholders at a same level. You need to classify them, and the classification work is done in the second step called analyze. There could be a various classification technique you can use. You can try to classify the stakeholders on the basis of power they have and interest they have in a project. So the people who are very powerful and very interested, you need to manage them very closely. The people who are powerful but not less interested in your project, you need to keep them satisfied because they are powerful. Example, a functional head or a vertical head of a different group. So since he's a vertical head, if he raises the point at a portfolio level or at a senior management level, your project can get scrapped. But since he is managing his own vertical, he is not worried about core functioning of your project. But you need to keep him satisfied that yes, we are not wasting money. We are doing something which is good for the organization. So we need to keep him satisfied. He should be feeling okay about your project progress. The high, the sponsor, the person who is awarding a project to you. He is the one who is spending money for this particular project. So if he feels that things are not going good, he can just scrap the project. So the project initiator group, depending upon your organization structure, PMO may fall also here. Portfolio people can also fall here. The people who are very influential for your project future, and they are also interested in the success and failure of your project. The people who are not powerful but high interested. So they are low in power but high in interest. Like team members, technical architects. So they are the guy who are working. They are like a technical architect who is guiding your project for the architectural point of view. He is very much interested, but he is not that powerful to change your project direction. And there could be other type of people who are low, like the people who are in other project team. They are not that much interested and they are not that much influential for your project, but they are some way impacting you. That's why you have identified them in your list. So this is a type of classification which you can do, and on the basis of this classification you can identify a category for those stakeholders, and finally you can identify a strategy to manage or engage those groups. There could be other classification processes or strategies as well. You can classify using power and influence. So the second possible categorization or an analyzation process could be power, influence. The third could be influence and impact. You can try to categorize people on the basis of, or stakeholder on the basis of influence and impact they make on project. There is a fourth technique which was also discussed in PMBOK, is called salience model. It is saying this model talk about relative importance. So salience, the word means relative importance, and you can identify say 3-4 parameters. On that basis you can rank the stakeholder. The parameter could be like power, urgency, legitimacy. So you can rank the people on this basis, stakeholder, or you can rank the stakeholders on these categories and identify the final classification as a total or a weighted rank of these 3 areas. Now we are done with analysis. We have analyzed them and classified them in a various category. Finally, we need to put an assessment. The assessment is a step where we are trying to identify what kind of events will make happy or unhappy to a given segment or a given category of stakeholder or an individual stakeholder. To identify what makes them worried or happy, what kind of information they need, what are their interests. For example, there could be one person who is from a technical background, and since he is managing a managerial role, but even though he is a functional manager of a different function, but because of his technical background, he may be always remain interested in this technical area of your project. So we try to identify the interest, the area of interest of those stakeholders. We also try to identify how they will react to a given situation. Now, these all assessments are primarily done by project manager and the selected individuals in a form of meeting and expert judgment, and this is finally recorded as a stakeholder register. Now, the stakeholder register will have all these 3 segment of information. It will have initially an identification information, like who is the guy, what is his employee ID, what is his email ID, where does he live, what is his phone number, etc., etc. Identification, rank, qualification, organization history, whatever. So that is one type of information we put here. After that, we put a classification, the summary which we got as a step of analyze. We need to classify this list into various categories. Could be like these: supportive, neutral, resistor, leader, external, internal. So we can make this kind of category or a classification for our stakeholders. Then finally, assessment. So whatever assessment we have done here, we need to record it in the form of stakeholder register. So this becomes the stakeholder analysis get stored in the form of stakeholder register. So at the end of this process, Now again, I would be pointing it out, this is an iterative process. But at the end of any iteration, we get a stakeholder register. And this stakeholder register becomes a very crucial input for your various requirement related activities, risk management related activities. Even the quality related planning, you need to ask these stakeholders about their quality expectation. You need to ask these stakeholders about their product expectations. So this becomes a crucial input for many of our processes which we are performing in other knowledge areas.